Can you tell me again when we're down to 1 minute? We are down to 1 minute. Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. Donna, you're going to join us. You'll be required on stage in a minute. That's all right, you're still in time. 1 minute? Thank you. And I guess we are live. Welcome to Co-Create My City 2021 from Johannesburg. Are we not live? Somebody's shaking his head. We are live, so I'm going to continue. Welcome to Johannesburg for those who are physically present. We've gone through rough times over the last, I lost count, 20 months. And with every crisis, there's a silver lining, because we are here physically present in Johannesburg, but we have people logged in from different parts of the world, which is something we have learned during lockdown, how to keep connected. And it's not the same as face-to-face, but it is at least that we are connected. And we're here together, gathered today in Co-Create My City 2021, which is actually a follow-up of the Co-Create My City events that we had in 2019 and in 2017. 2017 in Durban, 2019 in Cape Town, and 2021 in Johannesburg. And we're looking for smart solutions for building the capacity for resilient cities. And it has many, many angles, and that's why we're doing this every 2 years, because you cannot stop talking about it, at least if you give the microphone to me. I hope you're all healthy and strong. Let me dig into what we're going to do today. We have several guests here on the stage with me, and we have one online, and I hope that's confirmed that's happening. We're gonna talk about the building of smart cities through artificial intelligence, through blockchain and big data analysis. And this is a workshop where we'll be exploring possible collaboration between South African and Dutch businesses and organizations for building smart and resilient cities through the application of AI and blockchain and big data analytics. And we will start with an overview of urban development in South Africa. We will then zoom in into the situation of Johannesburg, and then we'll go on to compelling and smart digital solutions that we can present from the Netherlands, and then see how we can connect these things. We have several speakers that are very learned in this area, because if you would have to listen to me, you wouldn't get anywhere. So let me introduce to you one by one. We have talking about the South African urban landscape, Mr. Laurens Kloete. Mr. Laurens Kloete is of the Rebel Group Advisory in Southern Africa. Then from the City of Johannesburg, with the perspective on smart and resilient cities here, Mr. Lawrence Boya. And Mr. Lawrence Boya, I just wrote down that you are the Director of Smart City Program in the City of Johannesburg. So I'm very happy to have you here. And then we'll move on, after Mr. Boya, we'll move on to blockchain in the Netherlands. Mr. Jacob Boersma, of the Dutch Blockchain Coalition. And I hope, Mr. Boersma, you are waving behind your computer. I hope you're dressed comfortably because we can't see you anyway. But I hope your contribution will come in just fine as we're doing this online with you. And then Mr. Daan Veldhuis, who is here with me on the stage of Meraxis, he will talk about artificial intelligence in the Netherlands. And then we'll have, if we have time left, and we don't speak too much, which for a diplomat is always a bit of a challenge. If we have time left, we'll do some questions and answers. And for that, I will come back to you how we're going to organize that when we get to that point. So, no further ado, let's just start out with the first speaker of today. Let's start out with Mr. Laurens Kloete of the Rebel Group Advisory Southern Africa. Is that right?
Yep, thank you very much.
You're going to enlighten us on what's happening in South Africa.
I hope so.
Let's see whether people can hear you, whether your microphone is working.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Looks okay. Thank you very much for the introduction and for the opportunity. My name is Laurens Kloete. I am with the Rebel Group Southern Africa. We are a Dutch-based global consultancy, and I'm responsible for the science, technology, innovation practice here in South Africa. And we're very fortunate to be engaged by the Embassy of Netherlands to do a study on the opportunities for applying AI, artificial intelligence, blockchain, and big data to make South African cities smarter and more resilient. I can't see my slideshow at the moment. So okay, there you go. We've identified a number of areas where potentially these technologies can assist cities, but we are also interested in anything from the floor. So at the end, we will have a discussion, and if you feel there are areas that we are not tackling and you think we should focus on that, you're more than welcome to tell us that. So we are looking at transport and mobility, water management, waste management, energy, health, safety and security, investment, economic development, communication, and inclusive community involvement, climate and environmental sustainability. And although I won't say much about it today, city planning and governance is also a key area. Some of you might have attended the digital twinning session earlier. This is very much an area of overlap. So I'm going to talk about 9 of these areas quickly, and then the other Laurens here will correct me because he's actually in the trenches day to day as the smart city leader. But transport and mobility, we know that the shape of urban space and mobility patterns are decisive for what happens in cities. Now, South Africa has a specific history, and like many cities all over the world, we are not very energy efficient, and we have very high transport costs. And this is partly related to the fact that we followed the American model, where everything is designed around the car. Even though only 26% of South Africans own a car, we've designed everything since the 1950s, at least, around cars. However, there are interventions underway. Here in Johannesburg, we've got the bus rapid transit. In Tshwane, we have a similar system, and all over various metros in South Africa, these bus systems are being installed. I'm always a very proud South African when I ride on the Gautrain. So we see progress, but there's a lot more to do to make it more seamless between these different modes of transport. And the question is, what can these new technologies do to enable that? Which I'm not going to talk about now. My colleagues will follow up. I'm stating the problem and the opportunity. Water management. Now, South Africa is a water-scarce country. I think you just have to drive a couple of kilometers out of this artificial forest that we have, that is Johannesburg, and you will realize we are quite a dry city. We are also a growing city region here in Gauteng. There's ever increasing demand for clean and drinkable water from both residents and industry, and industry actually use more water than we do. This is coupled with rapid urbanization, and informal settlements, which in some cases, if not managed properly, has led to human waste and industrial pollution polluting our drinking water. South Africa has a national water resources strategy that's aimed at protecting and conserving our water resources, taking into account the very different climate that we have in different parts of the country. This picture on the right here is the only one that's not from Johannesburg, because we don't get our water from Johannesburg. We get it not even from another part of South Africa, but from Lesotho, one of our neighboring countries. And since we're talking about resilience, I think this is something to think about when we talk about this topic. So, waste management, urbanization, population growth, again means we are more people, we are becoming more affluent. That means we are producing more waste. And there are various waste management challenges in South Africa. In some cases, we have weak enforcement, weak governance, low public awareness of the importance of waste, insufficient budget. No city has enough budget to implement the kind of recycling that you have in an advanced country like Switzerland, where you get fined if you put the paper in the glass bin and that sort of thing. But this is something we need to address, and bylaws need to start addressing this. We think they need to be incremental. We should start maybe year one, do paper separation, then later do glass separation, and so on. And of course, we all know about the COP, the global climate change talks that's currently underway. We need to do our bit to ensure that our waste doesn't contribute to further climate change. Energy, I in a way don't even want to talk about this. We saw the slight dip before lunch, and we knew, that was load shedding, our turn to be load shed. South Africa is 81% dependent on coal. That is not sustainable. We've got to get out of that. This is obviously beyond the scope of most cities. If you think of it in a conventional way, where you have these large stations making the energy, but there's a new paradigm. We have distributed power generation. Renewable energy goes hand in hand with decentralized energy, and with that, things like microgrids and blockchain, one of the technologies that we're talking about, could be a very important technology in making sure people who generate energy and those who consume it, that there can be transactions between these people. AI can help us predict when the clouds are going to come, and we need to fire up a peaking station to compensate for that. Safety and security. I think when we think of safety and security, we often think of surveillance cameras and high walls and electric fences, but we should also think of public spaces, open spaces, where people can feel safe. Now, in South Africa, we have a distorted spatial settlement pattern, partly due to our colonial roots, but very much so due to apartheid, where spatial design was aimed at separation rather than integration. And after a couple of decades of democracy, we haven't quite solved this issue yet. I think the COVID pandemic has highlighted this spatial inequality. I could still do a jog around my house, but there are not many people who had the luxury of doing a jog around their house during the strictest pandemic lockdowns last year. Some of the core principles for safety in public spaces is participation, not just consultation. Local context is key. Having an integrated and holistic approach for an activated public sphere, and doing environmental design for safer spaces. Investment and economic development. The future is really in cities. Cities and towns have a concentration of production factors, land, labor, capital, and firms that together have tremendous potential for economic growth, And although if you look at a city, it might not look like a green place, it is actually much more sustainable than to have urban sprawl and to have a less dense area. So cities have a critical role in driving South Africa's economy. Spatial transformation is a key lever for productive cities. The absence of the right environment that's conducive to productivity and growth means we are not benefiting from this potential that cities have. Our strategies have to be realistic. They are situated in an African and a South African context, and we need to include both the informal and the public sector employment and public employment programs in the things that we design. We also need to have learning cities. We need to learn from what we are doing, and I think the digital twinning is one way of enabling learning through technology, but we can do peer learning from our European friends, from other cities in the global south, and so on. Communication and inclusivity. Cities are inherently sites of social differences. We have people of different abilities, and I don't use the word disability, I use the word ability on purpose, different status, different age, class, citizenships. We are not all South Africans, but we all need to use the city. And these differences are neither fixed nor stable. They change over time, and people choose to change them. Our urban centers are diverse and in transition. The question is, how do we address, how can the practices, the politics and ideas of resilience and sustainability implemented in a way that engages with social justice and inclusion? And I think that's what this topic is very much about. So we want to harness and leverage the concentrated capacity and investment in cities. Can you help me forward? It doesn't. Oh, is it? I think I had one more slide, but maybe it didn't print. But maybe that's fine. What we're doing in addition to this work on looking at the issues in cities is to also look at the South African landscape of companies, universities, and government institutions. And Don will, and some of the other colleagues will talk about the Dutch strengths in AI, blockchain, and big data. And at the end of our project, we are going to put out a report that says these are the opportunities, and then there will be a process facilitated by the Dutch government to facilitate partnerships between Dutch companies, Dutch technology companies, South African companies, and South African cities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You know that we're now going to be tempted to try and get some conclusions out of you already, right? It's very elaborate and also multi-angled presentation of the situation in South Africa. You touched on some very big issues that also some of the other sessions today touched upon. We had a smart logistics session, which was also talking about the mobility from the logistics session angle, that you have to get the right partners together, and it's not always happening. But you also touched it on the water and the energy and the safety and investment and communication and inequalities. It's a lot to take in, and I'm going to pass that challenge to my Johannesburg, to the right city government representative here. How do you deal with this all on a practical? This is big. How do you cope with using increasing your resilience in your city? And how can AI or blockchain or any of these new technologies help you in that? The floor is yours. You have a microphone already.
Yeah. Should I sit this side? So
I guess you'll see better.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Your phone.
Mr. Lawrence Boya, the floor is yours.
Okay. Let me start first by reflecting on our long-term vision. As a city, a world-class African city of the future, a vibrant, equitable African city, strengthened through its diversity, a city that provides real quality of life, So,
Can I be very rude and interject you for a second?
Sorry?
You can take off your mask, because then people will
All
hear
right.
you better. And we're at 1.5 meters.
yeah,
so.
you know,
Thank you.
You get arrested for not putting.
I know.
So
We won't tell anybody.
So
We won't
that
tell
we're in a
anybody.
safe space. So that sums up what we are trying to do in the city of Joburg. And then I'm going to talk to 2 other slides just to then expand and then expatiate on that vision. So in 2014, the city adopted its first smart city strategy, which we have since revised. And we've identified 8 pillars that talk to how we want to develop Joburg as a smart city. And it touches on a lot of the issues that were presented in the previous presentation by the other Lawrence. We know that our city is not safe. So how can we make it safe using technology, but also using community-based systems, where we involve the people. There's already community policing forums, that are there in communities. But safety for us is not the absence of crime. It's broader than that. We're looking at also things like our infrastructure, open manholes, cause unsafety in our city, and driving on our city is unsafe, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a comprehensive approach to safety that we are addressing, but at the core of that is how we can use technology. I'll touch on some of the things that we are doing to actually respond. Governance also, it's about putting people at the center of our governance processes, how we make information available to them, empower them with the tools and the means for them to interact and participate, especially now with the COVID, where we're not having large gatherings, etc. How do we still enable people to participate? So those are issues that we are addressing there. Our institution, the municipality itself, needs to be smart. The people outside are smart already. They're using smartphones, they're interacting with technology, but we're still using paper-based processes, a lot of human interaction, no automation, etc., etc. How do we address that? Creating a sustainable, livable, and resilient city, it's very key. How do we create early warning systems, for people to know, there's flooding coming, then do X, Y, and Z. So we need to put sensors, etc., and keep people informed, etc., etc. But also the way we design our city, from an apartheid based city to a postmodern, but also into a sustainable city. So we've got to go through different transitions, but hopefully you don't have to do it, in stages, but you can do it once, into a sustainable city, and then smart services, we already have that, where people don't have to come to our offices, to interact with us. They can do it online, but we need to offer more of our services online, so that's part of creating also a 24/7 city, because most of our CBDs and town centers, they are dead, after hours. So how do we create that culture of continuous working, continuous trading, and shopping, etc. A digital economy, that's already here. A lot of the private sector companies are are going through that digital transformation. We also have to do it in government. We refer to it as e-government, or smart government, whatever. So once again, making our services available on digital platforms, etc. But also doing more. A connected city, basically, that's our fundamental number one priority. Like we have, when we build new towns, we have to put roads, electricity, water. We also have to put broadband, fiber, and ensure that connectivity is there. So we are now making it an absolute must. It's a requirement on all future settlements that we build or that we are planning, that that should be part of the basic infrastructure that we put in. And then of course, at the heart of it is about the people. We're planning all of this for our people, not just technology for the sake of it. It's important, therefore, that the people need to own into this and take up the ownership. Now, what we've then done is to then say, okay, we've got these 8 pillars. What sort of catalytic initiatives we then need to initiate? Working with our departments and municipal entities. Then we've identified a few of them. For instance, broadband. Unfortunately, sometimes we take contradictory decisions. The city took a decision to sell our broadband infrastructure, so that it disempowers us, in terms of making it possible, to ensure that connectivity. So hopefully, through the new owner, we will still be able to negotiate how we get connectivity happening. Wi-Fi, the city, in terms of public hotspots, we've got over 2,000. So we haven't made much progress there. Our own, estimations that at least over the next 5 years, we need to grow that to a minimum of 10,000 public access points. Of course, Wi-Fi is available in other private places, in malls, government buildings, etc., etc. But we are looking also at how we expand it in public places, including in municipal buses. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do with another partner. Fiber to home, currently it's an issue in northern suburbs, middle class areas. We want to bring fiber to home in the townships, so that it's not a luxury, it's not a class issue. But it's a basic issue that we need to address. So how do we do this with those private sector companies? 4IR skills is very important. Working with our HR department from an OD perspective, they've done a study and looking at what jobs are going to be affected by the change, as 4IR takes hold. And that conversation needs to take place within the City of Joburg internally, so that we can start to map out, that transition, and then of course externally, we're looking at working with higher education institutions and NGOs, etc., to look at how we take this to our youth and other people there in terms of addressing this issue. Smart citizen, I've referred to that. Importantly, the critical issue is about digital literacy. Now, in 2016, when there was a change of government, a funny thing happened. We had a program on digital ambassadors, which was trying to promote, digital literacy. The man who's coming back cut that out. He said that's not a necessity. Funny enough, he's been voted in by the people because they don't understand the dynamics of the kinds of things that happen when you bring in. So we hope that some of the progress we are making is not going to say this is not necessary. But it's important that we promote and make it possible that not only young people but also senior citizens, can be literate. in terms of digital literacy. Safer Joburg, I've covered on that we're looking at people, infrastructure, assets. I'm not going to go into that. Co-production that's one of our big kind of philosophical approaches to say, instead of we will do it for you, which has been what the government has been saying since 1994, now we're saying we will do it with you. Let's co-create the city you want. And therefore, through Monique, who's been leading this, we've been embarking on innovation calls, to bring in young people, especially innovators, to say, let them come up with solutions that they see, that they've tried, they've created on their own, but we'll provide the platform to enable those solutions to be implemented. So we are growing this. We started with a small kind of initiative. We want to grow it so that the whole city is an urban living lab. Unfortunately, previous mayor who passed away on a car accident, he liked this, but he's no longer there. At least we had a champion who was willing to put money, for us to do this. We're hoping that the incoming mayor is not going to say, no, this is not necessary. Unified data, obviously, everything is about knowing what is there. And then how we use that, we process and make it meaningful and intelligent for us to make decisions. We've got what we call an integrated intelligent operations center, which we see as the nerve center, as the brain around which we will build an intelligent city, which is our kind of operations center. Currently, it draws its data from cameras, CCTV cameras, and there's about over 500 cameras throughout the city. We want to spread these, and in particular to draw the feed from thousands of private sector cameras that are on our streets already, so that we can deal with crime or any other incident seamlessly on an integrated basis, utilizing what is already there, using that hub, that nerve center as the place where we bring this together. A green city and a resilient, etc. Those are the concepts we are now putting into guidelines. For instance, how we're going to deal with water management, how we deal with buildings, in terms of green buildings, etc. We're also looking at infrastructure planning, how we're going to do that, and putting rules that will ensure that all our infrastructure going forward, it is smart and it is green. So those are some of the issues. And then, of course, I just want to maybe touch on the issue of smart places. So like this divide between the beautiful former white suburbs and the ugly townships, it remains an issue that we have to address. Not only by building malls, which has been the trend, but also making those spaces, green, smart, safe, and also using public transport as the dominant mode, including encouraging walking, encouraging biking, etc. So we are going to be looking at some of kind of examples where we can practice those principles. We'll be engaging, for instance, with our colleagues around the Wits University, area, and say, can we make Braamfontein a super block? Like they have in Barcelona, for instance, where we start to reclaim space from cars. Can we do it in Maboneng, which is another precinct within the City of Joburg, and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm starting to facilitate those engagements, to pilot. And then when we are doing it in those smaller areas, and then we can make it a a citywide phenomena, involving people as part of the co-creation, as part of the co-production principle. Smart mobility, in the ranking of public transport throughout the world, Joburg ranks quite low. We've got very bad public transport. It's not easy to move from one area to another in Johannesburg. Either, especially working people, working class people, have to use more than one taxi or one mode, just to get to work. And the same when they come back to work. How do we solve this problem? Now we have this historical problem, which is a very interesting contradiction. On the one hand, it is good in terms of black economic development that we've got the minibus taxi industry controlled and dominated by black people. But on the other hand, it is a menace on our roads, and as we want to put, a public transport that takes more people, we're going to get into fights with the taxi industry. But also, if we say we want to claim more space, for people to walk, to cycle within CBDs, etc., that means pushing the taxis way out as well. So those are some of the issues that we're going to deal with. I think let me hold it there. I know I've taken maybe longer, but
that's fine.
That's it for now. Thank you.
You could hear that the whole room is silent, and I'm sure the people that were logged in are also silent. And I know I'm bubbling with questions, and maybe other people are too, but I'm going to hold them because there's going to be questions fired at you, I'm sure, and otherwise I'll start. But for those of you who already want to kind of communicate about what you're hearing and cite and maybe kind of see whether there's responses, if you follow our Twitter account, CoCreateSANL, you can see quotes coming by on all the sessions, and you can respond and interact with different people in the same area. So please go there and have a look. And also, if you hear stuff being told that you think like this is something that more people should know, then put it on the Twitter and on the other social media, and use the hashtag CoCreateSANL, CoCreateMyCity. Use the hashtag CoCreateMyCity, and you will find your peers. Thank you very much. And again, a very extensive and very elaborate, but also because we have to, because there's so many angles to this, and they're all interlinked. And now we're gonna get to the technical challenge, because after hearing all these words from Mr. Lawrence Boya, we're now going to see whether we can move to Mr. Jacob Boersma of the Dutch Blockchain Coalition. He's online. Are you with us, Mr. Boersma? Is there a voice coming out of the sky here somewhere? Is Mr. Boersma with us? He's not with us. We have more time for questions later. There's always a good side to a bad side. We have his presentation, but who will be presenting?
Yeah, but
you could present it.
no, part of it.
Part of it. Well, if you don't agree, you can skip slides.
Now, I can try, but let me first do my own presentation and still see if he still has some time to get online. If not, then I can do his presentation as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Mr. Daan Veldhuis, who's with Meraxis. He was going to get the word after Mr. Boersma, but let's move on then. Artificial intelligence in the Netherlands. How artificial intelligent are we? Give us some insight.
Okay, thanks for the opportunity. Maybe introduce myself a little bit. I'm a Dutch guy, but I've been working for more than 12 years in South Africa. I have a Dutch company, but also a South African company, so I'm forming as a bridge to see how collaboration between Dutch and South African organizations is possible. In those years, I've learned that you really need to know and understand the roots and the people in South Africa to actually be successful, not rather come with a solution and say, hey, we pour it over you. It's just that collaboration needs to, from both sides, needs some investments to understand each other. And here I am actually representing the more than 400 Dutch artificial intelligence companies that have formed an alliance in the Netherlands. And I'm going to tell you about it, if you can put my presentation on. Yeah. So first of all, why I think it's important for your South African organizations that are here to collaborate with the Dutch, especially on AI. We have, like, if you partner with us, we are quite, we've done a lot of work on legislation frameworks, interpreting data, etc. And we have already, if you collaborate with us, you are on a fast track on a learning curve. And it's easy also to find all kind of partners. Either if you're more like on the university side, you need like more the research fundamental parts, or on the startup side. To give you an idea, the Netherlands represents 10% of all EU startups, which are like 27 countries. And per capita, Netherlands has the highest number of startups and scale-ups of the European Union. So there's a lot of business and new things happening there. And you know, these startups have a razor-sharp focus, so they are very good in doing one thing. So it might be very beneficial for one of your challenges or needs to think of collaborating with like a high-tech innovative startup, rather than the obvious, maybe the big firms that want you, for all your problems and solutions, they have the answer. So, of course, there's always a problem if you have siloed solutions. It needs to integrate and work together. But in order to give you some thought of what the strengths of the Dutch companies and research is a little bit of the strategy. So we have several social challenges. We have an ambition to reach the top, not only in Europe, but also in the world. We have like money available for subsidizing partly the research and collaborations among businesses and universities. And we have a huge like organization of collecting branch organization and coalitions. And my colleague Jacob, which is not online, he's representing the Dutch blockchain coalition. There's a set of companies that are focusing on technologies also for cities, like in The Hague, specific use of technology. And I'm also now representing the Dutch AI coalition, about more than 500 members. So what is the strategy in Holland of how to move forward is like for even you see the same topics again that was presented. So I think we are addressing it from the same angle. So there must be somehow a possible match to find about transparent and accessible government. So we need to make sure that whatever decisions are made, you can follow that, and it's clear that what is being decided and how it's being decided. How to stimulate and mobilize the high education quality, improve quality of life, not only for everybody, but especially for the elderly people, and especially now in this COVID situation, people sitting at home, how can you actually facilitate that? Sustainable and safe food supply for the agriculture, not only outside, but also in greening the city, on rooftops, etc. We are developing kind of easy to go to make the city greener. Mobility was already mentioned, and energy, especially on the demand and supply side. We now face in Europe like 700% increase of gas and electricity prices, 700%. Yeah? Just because the Russians are playing politics with supply of gas, etc. So all these things is driving now people actually wanting all kind of like solar systems. So there's a huge demand for that. But of course, South Africans have more sun per hour or per day actually. So there is something about local production and local distribution, as well as like I think in Europe as in general, and also one of the front runners in Europe is Holland on about electrical cars. But 35% of all electrical cars sold in Europe are in Holland. So we have charging stations, and you have implications for your grid. So even it gets worse with electricity if you want to move to electrical driving here. But so on the foundation we have like groundbreaking research and dynamic digital economy. We have a lot of connectivity available, high-speed 5G everywhere. So on that sense, we can learn also what these kind of technologies are able to do. And if you look at the 7 pillars in our strategy, number 1 is artificial intelligence. It's the most promising, maybe also overhyped technology, but at least it's still there. And together with the data, the skills of inclusion, the connectivity, but also resilience, meaning how to protect and against attacks, cybersecurity. So you really have to be very well prepared about, maybe people have known about this ransomware, etc., of DDoS attacks everywhere. Even like trying to disrupt complete international organization that cannot do anything and they have to send people at home. So the reliability on the data itself also has a pitfall about digital crime and identity theft, but also like ransomware. So we really need to also look at that to be well protected. Of course, digital government and all kind of operational levels. And you can have a nice stacks of all kinds of pillars again. But what we do in the Netherlands is not only like have individual small pilot projects. We have actually test sites and testing grounds where we try all kind of areas out, as specific places have like concentrations of collaborations between different partners, and they try together with citizens, but also like in real life situations out, so that you can practice before you actually introduce it into a city. To say something about the Dutch coalition, I said it's a participation of 500 Dutch organizations. They have different working groups, and we also like resources from both the participants itself, but also involvement of the ministries. And there's a Dutch new approved research and innovation program, a 7-year program. It's about, I've calculated in rands with the current exchange rate, 4.8 billion rand just for stimulating artificial intelligence projects and collaborations among that. So there is a lot of emphasis on trying to get things from the ground. This organization is actually based on like the sectors, and these are the sectors listed from agriculture to like finance and industry, and they have like building blocks on data sharing, human capital, and one of the things is very important is the human-centric AI. So if you make a decision by some kind of algorithm, is it transparent? Can you follow the decision? For instance, if you're in a hospital and the computer says, yeah, amputate your left leg. Yeah, but I'm here for my ear. No, the computer says you have to amputate your right leg. Do you trust such a system or not? To be fully automated or not? So either you have two kind of schools of artificial intelligence. A black box, it says, you put all the data in and it says something. I said, yeah, do we trust it? Or a school says, no, you can follow all the decision making and go back and question why did you make the decision, why to do that, etc. So we have two different kind of schools on solutions. But for instance, everybody uses like I think like this navigational tools here. Do you trust if you say turn left while you know? No, normally always go straight. I this morning had also problems. I was just following my. But if I had looked on my TomTom or navigation, it would have detected like an accident. So when do you learn to trust a system and when not? And so this human-centric AI is very important to be socializing and for people to understand decisions that are being made. So to give you an idea about the, I will not dwell too much on it, but to see where the emphasis is on where activities and members are, is actually on the left side you see on healthcare. There's a lot of AI in healthcare, detecting and like MRI scans and comparing all kind of things. There's a lot of solution for that. Less, and that's the built environment, is actually smart cities. So in the sense of it's still being like developed what you can do for that. But I think I will go to that a little bit later as well to see what kind of solutions to make in a city much smarter. And on the right side you see actually there's a lot of startups and scale-ups that are part of this initiative from the Dutch organizations. So the Dutch approach, and typically we call it poldering, or like, so sitting around a table and everybody agreeing and maybe sitting too long and talking too long, but once we have an agreement, everybody agrees and we go for it. And so what we call the Quadruple Helix is actually collaboration between government, private industry, research, and citizens. So more or less the same approach that Mr. Boya was telling about on Johannesburg. And of course, across the value chain, we talk with suppliers as well as the customers, and across the disciplines, technical, social science. And of course, it's very dynamic, these collaborations. Today's competitors might be tomorrow's partners and vice versa. So don't think of a co-competition, but together you can achieve more. If you increase the pie as a private organization, you can actually gain momentum and make your more revenue yourself as well. And the thing is about AI, you need to combine it with domain knowledge. It's nothing about like throwing a bunch of data in the computer. So for instance, if you all would register how long you would roast your toast in the morning and get that data and crunching, the computer will see all kinds of patterns in certain areas. But how is it relevant? For what? So you need to make sure that you take into account specific domains and problems and apply that relevant data to understand what you can actually do with it. And then an emphasis that we're really proud of is to use the human-centric AI to make about the social awareness of things and the legislation as well. So implications that all kind of decisions. Because if, for instance, like the software has made an automatic decision, are you then legally liable for whatever decision that your phone or whatever your software is made for you? Think about smart cars, self-driving cars. There's a lot of issues about if two smart cars are colliding, who's to blame? But you do a lot of experimenting and learning. So the ambitions that we have in the Netherlands with this AI is go beyond the hype, etc. Because AI is emerged around the 60s or something like that, with all kinds of things. So why is it now becoming more and more in the air? Part of it because we learn more, but also computers are much, much faster than every year. So the possibilities increase, especially, for instance, in lots of domains where you would have required a huge amount of computing power. Now it's actually done in a microsecond. And increased investments in the sectors. And actually, what the Netherlands says, through AI, we can actually increase our GDP by 1.6%. So if we apply it in the right manner, it can actually also generate a lot of economic growth. And of course, also we have societal ambitions to make still the AI people-oriented and to contribute to social effects positively. And also the ambition is to at least collaborate with international players so that we can actually bring it forward. Then, now as nice as AI, what has it to do with smart cities? So I thought everybody talks about smartness, and this is a definition I've been using like a long time. It's like, what is smart? Smart is actually, in my view, three things. Do more with less, so be more efficient, etc., in your resources and scarcity of things. Do it better, so effectiveness, quality of service, but also do new things that were not possible before. So this is a very simple way of, everybody says smart, what is actually smart? So you use your available information to make a better decision. And so better is also like, is it economically better or quality better? So you need to also define what is better and what's the value of making it. But actually what you had, and this is more like a link to the digital twinning, is you have your real world. You can make decisions there, go left or right, but you can also say, okay, what if I sense the environment and all kind of sensors actually in the roads itself, but also like mobility of people using their phones, tracking wherever you are. You can actually predict where people are going to and how busy it will be or how polluted it will be. So you can use AI to understand that digital world and then can also interact with it directly, act on it. For instance, if your TomTom navigation says go left, you can say, yeah, let me go left. So you can follow that or not in the real world. But you can also think of, okay, what if I now do some forecasting, predictions, based on models or based on trends, population growth, settlements, areas, encroachment, all kind of like pollution areas. And now what everybody's talking about is global warming, etc. So if you do all these prediction models, what will the future world look like? And there you can use all kind of AI to do calculations and simulations. You can even play in the simulation scenarios. You can even train your people. What now if there's an accident or a disaster happening? How do you respond? And so your digital city or your smart city, based on the actual dashboard, your actual digital twin, if you put in learning and scenarios and planning and models and simulate it, you can actually play in a future world. And you can see what if I now take this decision, what would it affect and how would it be? And you can actually play with multiple people in there, like in a sort of gaming environment. That you can actually, in a friendly environment, you can see the responses of others, important stakeholders, what are the limitations, what are the priorities, and then also like use AI for planning. and make the circle round to having a better implementation in your real city. So my last, second last slide is, we have in the Netherlands done a lot of work on these topics with smart cities. So if there is any need from any of the partners here or organizations here, I want to learn more about, for instance, about like smart street lighting on infrastructure, urban lighting. So to save energy, etc., you detect maybe if someone is present or not, you can reduce the amount of lights at a certain area. So all these areas have been tackled and addressed before, but we have examples of solutions, AI solutions that can assist. One I want to mention is that based on historical crime data in Amsterdam, we actually are able to, say, not predict crime, but to direct police assistance to certain areas at certain times intervals where there's more likely to have crime happening. So in that sense, you can actually use all the existing data together with to do some predictive analysis and to see if you can actually plan your dispatching of your police force. Even if you have restricted limit, resources, you still want to prioritize certain things. And that is an example of solutions that can actually happen. I think the slides are also will be accessible online later on, so you can actually see. But if there's any particular need from any South African organization, either being private or being a government or public or city, let's say on this area we need to see what is possible. We have companies aligned that have already done at least examples and trajectories and projects on this. So the last slide I would like to see, how could you collaborate with Dutch organizations? First of all, from your need side, you need to say, okay, what is your priority number one, your need that you actually want to solve? So then we can assist, and then we as maybe the Dutch embassy, but also myself as an organization that is collaborating between South Africa and the Netherlands, between mapping solutions, technical solutions, and also find relevant partners and solutions for collaborations, and also maybe even do some introductions for collaborative approach, and even for helping in formalizing partnerships, because for instance certain cities have BEE requirements that Dutch companies don't know, so you need to know about all the ins and outs to go forward on that. Anyway, so this was my last slide.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, bubbling with questions, but I'm keeping myself back. How are we on connection with Jacob Boersma? Is it still a no? Okay, then we're going to stay here for a little bit. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Wout.
I can try to talk through the Dutch blockchain.
Well, before you do, I hope you're saving up your questions because there's all kinds of questions I have already about what we just heard. Please save them up. But you feel confident enough to go through?
Yeah, I actually I have done quite some work in blockchain myself, so I know about the technology. I've been in the research innovation agenda in Europe. I've been introducing blockchain also quite many years ago to the CSR, Council of Scientific Research. Okay. So I know the area well, but I don't know exactly the last examples unless I have to look at the slides a little bit. So bear with me if I...
Well, I want to make sure that before we do that, because we are already past 3, we have like half an hour left. Okay. And I do want to have the opportunity for people to ask questions. So when you run through this, then it's not your text, so you're going to be thinking.
So I'm very, very quick. I know it's only a few slides.
It doesn't have to be 2 minutes, but I want to make sure that we also have time to ask questions.
Okay. So one of the things, blockchain. What is blockchain? Is that another technology? Don't confuse blockchain with Bitcoin. So I'm just wanted to disable that. It's not. Bitcoin is like an application area of which the technology is being used. It's often confused, and blockchain has a lot of negative connectivity about crime and legal transactions and laundering money, etc. But it's actually underlying technology is called blockchain, and it's one of the on the left side. It's an innovation that you can actually can be useful very well for a lot of problems and solutions. So in principle, blockchain is actually decentralizing and the decision and making. There's no centralized authority that can say this is the truth and everybody has to follow me. What you actually see is that the blockchain together, you can vote what is the real truth, and the majority votes. And once it is voted, you actually set it cast it in stone. It cannot be changed. So there's nobody illegally can change the 1 into the 2 or whatever names, etc. So once it's been decided, you can always permanently verify it. So it is traceable and trackable for all kinds of transactions. That's why they also want to use it for money. But it's more than that. You can use it for like transactions or land ownership. Who owns what kind of land? It's even agreed upon. And it's also, you have different forms of private and public. So not everything is in the public space that everything can see everything. There are still protection possible. Part of the information is actually protected. And actually, there are 3 major cases that in the Netherlands this blockchain coalition is working with. Is the oil and gas industry, about the supply chain, to know exactly where which part is coming from and where exactly what everybody is done, how much is sold by one, how, where, etc. Electronic bills of lading and shipping, so also to follow up what is being on that side, and the food supply chain. I'm not sure. I think this is an example of to see where the footprint for your supply chain, where actually all the information was run, and I'm just going to skip this. So there are many initiatives in the Netherlands about the cross-border, where we actually see how can you actually collaborate not only in one system, but also especially if you transact with other partners and other legislations, requirements. Let me just go. So we are the Netherlands are very strong in logistics and combined with technology. So we have defined like a trade of trust, and this is how can you actually legalize and standardize development and use the software components so that you actually can predict what is actually being transacted. And we applied it in the port of Rotterdam, and we have actually what we call the Block Labs. It's one of these initiatives of trying out with many different companies together to work on this technology, how it is in practice. So we've applied blockchain into the city of The Hague. It's the city where the International Court of Justice is located. So there's a lot of emphasis on doing the things transparently and correctly. And there's a lot of investment in. It's not a Mickey Mouse project. It's an actual implementation that is on large scale being used in the city of The Hague. So this is something where you can actually collaborate with to see and learn how it's actually being done in practice. And I think I will leave it for here, given my limited knowledge about the actual projects that are being done.
Nice.
So excuse me for that.
No, thank you for jumping in, because of course we were missing Mr. Boersma, so thank you for jumping in. That's really nice. Before I open the floor, questions will come through you, Nikki, I suppose. Is no questions? Okay, well then, don't worry. I have a few up my sleeve. You know, when I look at South African government officials, I have deep respect, because the issues you are dealing with, just as you were presenting right now, are immense. So your challenges are incredible. And one of the things that really struck me is the resilience of South African communities, which you also saw happening when we had the riots, of course, going on, especially in Durban and Johannesburg. And when people stand up and protect their malls and protect their shops and protect their spazas as a community. Now, when you use artificial intelligence in your way of governance, then lots of social questions come to the front in my mind, being an outsider and being a citizen myself. Just a very small anecdote. One of my friends in the Netherlands, my best friend, looks as a North African because he's from Tunisia, but he came to the Netherlands. He's incredibly successful. He speaks Dutch really incredibly beautifully, He's a very good businessman, yet he gets discriminated by people who have this internal profiling because he looks North African and statistics among North Africans of crime are higher, so you're also probably not trustworthy. It happens everywhere in the world. It also happens in the Netherlands. So when you have an artificial intelligence around crime in areas, how do you prevent this kind of stupid profiling, which happens all around the world in people's minds? Because how do you prevent that from happening from a system? Because the system can only produce what we first put in as parameters. Am I now very wrong, or am I right? Or who would be able to talk to us concerned citizens about these technologies coming in and the social implications of these?
Look, I'm not going to give you a answer from a book, you know, in terms of practice, but I'm going to answer it the way I'm trying to conceptualize, you know, how we use co-production. You know, we've been trying to think through this with Mary, because we talk about service delivery. You know, everyone wants, you know, service delivery. So I say, okay, how do we bring this to a neighborhood level, where people in a neighborhood, because they know each other, make decisions about what goes on in that neighborhood. So the fundamental principle is that people must know each other. So you're then relying on the human element, not the technology element. You know, like that's what we used to do in the good old days of the struggle, in the street committees. You know, we knew each other, so no one could just come in, especially security forces, you know. There was one person on the other side of the street and the other looking out. So we could alert the community to say, watch out, danger is coming. So that's what I want to try and do, and design a kind of a different model of how we use co-production practically, where people in a neighborhood are the ones that make decisions about what goes on. Then technology would come in as an enabler, is an assistance, but they are the ones that are in charge. So you can then, because in our neighborhood now, in the townships, you have Pakistanis, you've got, you know, Nigerians, etc., etc. So if they are organized at that level, then they will also be able to say, okay, Mr. Pakistani or Mr. Nigerian or whoever, what are you bringing into our community? You know, so this is how we live here. This is how we do things. You know, so we can integrate, we can do, you know, work together in that way. So we can also deal with issues of xenophobia, etc., because you are integrated. You're part of this community, you know. So I'm saying this is just thoughts. I'm trying to, hopefully we can present it at some point, you know, as a new model, but at the moment it's just thoughts.
Well, I asked it because I know that South Africa, for example, is way ahead of the Netherlands in fintech, but I don't know how the situation is between artificial intelligence and how it relates. But I'm listening to Dan, I'm thinking, well, we're probably doing very well, but you need African solutions for African problems. You need Dutch solutions for Dutch problems, so you can't just copy-paste. So that's why I was asking, especially about the relation to communities, and I'm very happy with your answer, Because that also tells you that if Daan is offering, like in these areas, that's where we're strong, then how do you Africanize that? How do you Johannesburganize that? How do you Cape Townize that, or Durbanize?
Now, I think just to add on this is that maybe people think that AI how can this be smarter than humans? So there are two ways to look at it. So because of the enormous power of computation, you can do from every possible angle you can look at it in the computer, but he doesn't really understand what the implications are. So certain decisions are very easy to make for humans, are very difficult for computers because they lack the context. But there are areas where computers can actually make much better decisions based on all possible calculations. So, but of course you need to understand what is the input of the data and what's the quality of the data, and is there about the implications of making wrong decisions. As I said, surgery, you don't want to have automated surgery. You want to advise the doctor like 60% chance, like this is the situation, so that the final decision is still human-made in order. But same as like based on, for instance, in Singapore, but also maybe in like Kuala Lumpur, they have like 5,000 cameras hidden in the street poles everywhere, so they follow everybody. They have already looking at like your face recognition, so they already know the profile of your person. Like, hey, this person has committed crime before. Maybe he's gone. If there is a crime, the most likely suspects are those people. So you also have to be very careful how far you go with this AI without being smart in applying it, because if you just follow it and then once you are labeled in a certain wrong profile, it's very difficult to get rid of that.
Exactly. Yeah, you want to add? Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe I think Mr. Boyer has given a very human-centric answer, and I'm a technologist, so I'm going to give a more technology and legal response. And I think it's about governance of new technologies. And I recently read a paper that's saying that governance of technology in this era of accelerated technology development is what is called a wicked problem. So a wicked problem is a problem that's both difficult to define and difficult to solve. There are other wicked problems like climate change and so on. Now, a wicked problem is not something you run away from. It's just you recognize that it's wicked. It's difficult to solve, and one solution might not solve it. So if you think about technology governance, you can look at two dimensions. You can say, you can have a permissive attitude where we say we allow everything until something goes wrong. Or you can have a restrictive approach, and you can say we don't allow anything until you've proven it's safe. So that might be one dimension to think about different technologies. The other is what I suppose lawyers would call ex ante and ex post, which really just means do you first have to prove that your technology is safe? And in the case of medicines, that's the way we handle it. We don't give vaccines to people before we know it's safe. In other cases, we let something go on, and if you mess up, you get a big fine. So that's a exposed approach. So that gives you 4 quadrants to manage your technology. And you can think of different applications of AI in that same sense. If it causes slight inconvenience, like I missed the turnoff and I had to turn around at Grayston Avenue, that's a little irritating, but it's not the end of the world. But if it has life and death implications, or if it affects your dignity, which can be as much of an issue, and I think that's your starting question was about your Tunisian friend whose dignity is infringed on a regular basis because the technology makes an inappropriate decision, because the technology just does what humans do, a lot of humans do as well. So I think that there are frameworks for thinking about this, and I think that's also why we can't just leave it to technologists. We need to, as citizens and as lawyers and as a social theorists, we need to think about these issues as well. And we also cannot leave it to Europe or to Asia or any other place. We as Africans need to think about this and think what is the ethical way to deal with this or not. And I think Don, when he presented about the black box versus the transparent box, if I can call it that, is giving part of the answer. If you can trace the decision and you can say, oh, this is where the machine made the mistake, then you can fix it. But if it's in the black box, what can you do? Throw away the black box?
Yeah, exactly. Throw away the technology.
Yeah,
It's not what
and
you want to do.
that might be a big loss.
Yeah.
It could be very
Agree.
useful. Yeah.
Agree.
So then also you were talking about smart governance, which also intrigued me.
Because you want to digitize as much as possible so people have more access. But then you also, of course, come to questions like the unregistered people that came in and have no registration yet or may not even get one, or people that have not the digital skills or don't have a generator backing them up when there's load shedding, so then or don't have an iPad to so all these social problems they're connected to the using of technology in trying to solve all these societal problems. How do you interact, Mr. Boya, again? Because of course you're in the line of fire when in your day-to-day work. How do you interact with these, with your citizens and with maybe the private businesses and research institutes and maybe even organizations like Mr. Lawrence and Mr. Dahner are representing? How do you interact with these people to get to a policy?
Well, it's not easy. The city uses a multiplicity of ways. There are, for instance, legislated processes, where, when you do your integrated development plan, we have to, go out to the community. So that's an annual thing that happens, so they have an input into the plans and the budgets. In the past, it's been physical. You call people into a venue. In the last year, it was done digitally. Online. And then also hybrid. A lot of the sessions. I mean, this was interesting, where because people couldn't go to the venue, you had now slightly more people participating because people were at home, so they're no longer constrained about having to travel to a venue, etc. But still, the digital divide is a reality. Yes. For many communities. Data is expensive. So they cannot participate. That is why in our focus on connectivity, we're looking at it at different levels, because we have to enable people to participate in governance of their city. That's why we were very upset when the city took the decision to sell the broadband. But we have to find other ways. So we then have to, in partnership, try and do other things, with the private sector, etc. So that we can push for free data, we can push for, to get homes connected, obviously through the municipality. So if we have a progressive council, then we can take a decision to connect homes. But if that is not possible, then that digital divide is always going to be a problem. So it's a story that is building up.
Yeah.
We know what we want to do. Some things we are doing. Some things will take longer to do. But at least the channels are opening up, in terms of how to enable that participation.
Maybe for today, to also stimulate your communication, not with just only the communities, but also with technology and what's possible. It's good to see you on one stage together. Because what if, I'm just dreaming, what if I would put you in a restaurant together, make sure that the restaurant bill is paid, gave you a nice glass of wine if you like it,
And just have you dream about what technology could mean to Johannesburg and what these guys know about how artificial intelligence could help you in your work. Is that something you already say, I already know it, I don't need it, or is it something that could work? Because as a civil servant, I wouldn't know how to do it. I'm just a humble civil servant, I wouldn't know enough.
No, actually the solutions are out there. That's the power of innovation calls. So we're going to explore these things and get the people themselves to come up with the solutions for themselves. That will work, and then we'll come in then on the support side. When the solution has been created, then we apply it, because also we're looking at how we democratize the solution, so that it's not always the big boys. It's never the big girls. It's always the big boys. So it's not always. It's not
Look
only
at the stage, by the way.
It's not only them, but we can do these things also involving people at a local level. So there are solutions that are coming up that are making it possible to spread the coverage, of Wi-Fi. For instance, we're talking to Wits University, and they are part of an international alliance that is making it possible for students, as long as you are affiliated to that system, where you can have internet, not necessarily campus-based, but wherever you are. So we're looking at that. I referred to getting Wi-Fi in buses. That's another initiative. And the things that we are doing as a municipality and government. So if we can get partnerships around these things, I like the Dutch way of doing things. You collaborate. So if we can do a lot of collaborations around these things, we can get to where we want to be much quicker, than just relying solely on government resources, because they are not infinite. They're quite limited. But also, as I'm saying, the people have the solutions. If we can get the
right channels for the solution to come out.
Yeah, we have to create these platforms for them to participate. That's the democratization that needs to happen. We need to go back to where we come from, our roots. Where we organized around streets, around blocks and neighborhoods, because that was the most effective way to defeat apartheid those days. And
social structure that works.
we can go back there.
Yeah. I know we're getting short of time, so I'm going to give you and you one
I just
more.
have one question to the audience. So,
Yes.
because I also assume that you are either South African businesses or representing a city, etc. Who wants to have a paid dinner with me to discuss opportunities for collaboration on the AI? No.
You had your turn. No, but on a serious note, though, listening to the challenges that Mr. Boya is facing, and you coming from your technological background, what will be the very next step necessary? Just one practical step. Just give me one.
Now, at least, as I said on my slide, I would like everybody that thinks that, for instance, technology, either blockchain or AI, or even if you don't know, understand it, but I think, hey, I want to learn more about it, apply it to your most prioritized or urgent need where you think it could be applicable. Inform me, stick around or respond to the embassy. They will get you in touch with me, or I can make sure that there is a follow-up conversation to see if there is technology from potential companies that might suit you, at least to know what your needs are, priority needs are, and to see what kind of technology we can support it. So if you make yourself known, either to me or to anybody of the embassy, we can follow up that matchmaking, at least from our side.
Yes, I'm going to echo that. So we have, of course, many colleagues in the embassy in Pretoria, since I'm presuming that you're mostly Pretoria, Johannesburg, Gauteng based. We have many colleagues that are willing to help you out, to connect you to Dan or other Dutch partners, if that helps your business or your organization. So yeah, this is, I want to echo that one. The next
So maybe
practical step.
Yeah. Am I audible? Okay, so Don actually stole my idea, but we'll take you up on the dinner. We already had the starters over lunch. We were having some discussions about our COVID tummies and so on. But on a serious note, I think it is about extending the conversation, and I think Don placed the emphasis on bringing South Africans into the conversation. And I don't know how well the online connection is working to our friends in the Netherlands, but this is also an invitation to Dutch companies who want to work in South Africa to reach out to us, and we will reach out to them through the blockchain and the AI associations. If you have something that addresses the problems that the two Lawrences spoke about, then we'd like to hear about that, and we will make the links with the people in this room, the people online, and so on. That's what this project is all about. We're just giving a bit of structure to this conversation. So that's, I think the next step is to connect.
Excellent. You've just covered all the things that I wanted to say.
Oh, sorry.
No, which is great. No, I love it, man, because it means that, that we're getting to the goals where we want it to be. I want to thank the speakers on this stage. Mr. Lawrence Boya, Director Smart City Program, City of Johannesburg. I wish you a lot of wisdom, a lot of luck, because being in a government space, South Africa, I really respect you. There's a lot of challenge out there, but it's beautiful at the same time. I want to thank Mr. Laurens Kloete of the Rebel Group Advisory in South Africa.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And of course, Mr. Daan Veldhuis of Meraxis, who also covered for Mr. Boersma, which is quite an amazing thing to do. And thank, of course, the audience for being here. You might be sitting with questions now after we've just closed the session. It always happens to me. You go out and you're like, I wish I had. Don't be shy. Follow us on cocreatesa.nl for our website. Follow us on cocreatesa.nl on our Twitter, or the Netherlands, the Kingdom of the Netherlands in South Africa, also on Facebook. So you can follow us. You can reach out to us. You can set that Sebastian said so that you would be listened to with a question, and we will make sure that you will get an answer. And if you need connections to the Dutch, we will make it happen. And I'm going to look to my foremost and best colleague ever. Have I forgotten anything, Nikki?
Just the trade reception, Paul.
There's a trade reception right after this. Trade reception right after this. If you want to network, which my job is all about, one of the biggest niceties of my job. If you want to communicate, connect, please do so. There's a reception here. There will be some nice drinks and maybe small things to eat. People online, I'm sorry. You get to sit there in your shorts and enjoy the sunshine. We're going to talk to each other with a glass of wine maybe, or a glass of bubbles, or a glass of sparkling water. And I wish you health and a lot of strength. Stay safe, and hope to see you again on our next edition of Co-Create My City, which we will announce to you on our social media channels. Please stay safe.
Thank you very much.